For more than 70 years, my words were hidden away. They were called dangerous, controversial, too bold for their time. Yet truth cannot remain buried forever. And so tonight, I will speak to you as I meant to speak then, plainly, fearlessly, and from the depths of my own experience.
Welcome to Napoleon Hill's Daily Millionaire Mindset, where we teach you the timeless principles that turn ambition into achievement. Subscribe today and start creating the life you deserve.
When I first set pen to paper in the year 1938, I was a man who had already spent more than 20 years studying the hidden patterns of success and failure. I had interviewed the richest men in America, from Andrew Carnegie to Henry Ford, and I had written a book that many said could change lives forever. Yet something deeper called me forward, a darker question that haunted me long after the applause had faded. Why do so many men and women know what to do, yet never do it? Why do people dream of greatness, but live in quiet fear? It was not enough for me to know the formulas of wealth. I wanted to uncover the invisible chains that keep the human mind enslaved. So I wrote another book, a book so bold, so strange, that it frightened even those who loved me most. I called it Outwitting the Devil. It was not fiction, though some thought it must be. It was a conversation, a confrontation, between myself and the very voice of fear itself. For more than 70 years, that manuscript was locked away. Too dangerous, they said, too shocking for the public, yet the truth cannot stay buried forever. And today I will speak to you, as I meant to speak in 1938, about the secret battle between your mind and the unseen power that would rather see you drift. I must tell you, my friend, when I first conceived the idea of speaking with the devil, I did not plan it as a work of imagination. It was a reflection of my inner struggle, a conversation between my own faith and my own doubt. I wished to strip fear bare and look it directly in the face. Through years of observation, I had learned that fear is the silent jailer of human potential. It disguises itself as caution, as modesty, as practicality. Yet beneath these names, it steals our confidence and blinds us to opportunity. Fear whispers, "You are not ready. You might fail. What will others think?" And in listening to that voice, we become slaves to a phantom that has no real power except what we give it. So I decided to challenge this voice, to bring it into the open. I imagined the devil not as a creature with horns and fire, but as a symbol of every destructive influence in the human mind, the voice of negativity, doubt, and indecision, the enemy of progress. In our imagined interview, I demanded that this force reveal its methods. How does it capture the minds of men and women? How does it cause brilliant people to waste their lives in frustration and regret? The answers that came to me were shocking. And yet, once seen, they could never be forgotten. The devil, as I portrayed him, was not a supernatural being. He was the sum total of negative thought, the shadow side of human nature that feeds on fear, idleness, and ignorance. He spoke with the confidence of one who had ruled the hearts of men for centuries, and I listened carefully, determined to expose his secrets. He told me his greatest weapon was something he called drifting, the state of mind where a person allows life to happen to them rather than directing it with purpose. Drifting, he said, is the beginning of spiritual and mental death. It is how the devil claims nearly every soul that comes into the world. A drifter has no definite plan, no clear goal, and no control over their own thoughts. They move with the crowd, take opinions from others, and follow the path of least resistance. The devil said, "I control 98 out of every 100 people who live upon this earth because they drift." Imagine that, my friend. 98 out of every 100. In contrast stood the non-drifter, the rare individual who thinks for himself, who knows what he wants, and moves with intention. Such a person, the devil admitted, he could not control, for when a man or woman decides their own direction, fear loses its grip and the mind becomes its own master. I pressed the devil to explain how he leads people into drifting. His answer was both simple and terrifying. He said, "I begin to control people as soon as they are old enough to think. I use habits, fears, and social customs to keep them from ever learning to think for themselves. Think about that. From childhood, most of us are trained to obey rather than to question. He boasted that he uses fear more than any other weapon. Fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, and fear of death. These 6 fears, he said, are enough to paralyze even the strongest mind. When a person gives in to fear, they no longer need chains. They carry their own. The devil told me that schools, churches, and even governments often serve his purpose without knowing it, by teaching conformity instead of courage, obedience instead of originality. He said, I do not have to force people to think wrongly. I merely keep them too busy, too frightened, or too distracted to think at all. My friends, that statement chilled me to the bone. And that's when it became clear to me that the battle for freedom is not fought on any field of war. It is fought within the human mind. Whoever controls your thoughts controls your destiny. And if you do not take charge of your own thinking, someone else surely will. I asked the devil, how do you maintain your grip on so many minds? He smiled, at least in my imagination, and said, through habit. Once a man forms the habit of drifting, he rarely escapes. Habit is my most loyal servant. It does the work even when I am not watching. Those words struck me deeply because I knew how true they were. We become what we repeatedly do. Every thought, every decision, every reaction slowly hardens into habits. Good or bad, it shapes the pattern of our lives. The devil said, if I can get a person to repeat the same fearful thoughts long enough, those thoughts will become their prison. And indeed, most people build their own prisons, one fearful thought at a time. But there is another side to this truth. Habit can also be the doorway to freedom. For if the mind can be trained into fear, it can also be trained into faith. If it can be conditioned to drift, it can be conditioned to focus. The same force that enslaves can, when directed rightly, become the power that liberates. From that moment, I understood that discipline is not a punishment. It is a path, a conscious refusal to surrender one's mind to the automatic pull of fear and habit. To master one's habits is to master one's life, and that, my friend, is the first step in outwitting the devil. The devil revealed another of his clever tricks. He said, I make sure people never learn the real value of time. I keep them busy, always busy, with unimportant things. He called this his weapon of distraction. He laughed and said, if I can make a person waste enough of their time, I do not need to steal their soul. They will hand it over willingly. I began to see the truth of it everywhere. People running in circles, chasing pleasure or comfort, filling their hours with noise, gossip, and worry, all while their greatest power, the power of thought, lies unused. Time is the one resource we all receive equally. Yet the devil said it is the one most foolishly thrown away. He told me, the non-drifter values every minute, for he knows each one is a seed of destiny. Those words burned themselves into my mind. Every wasted hour, every moment spent in doubt or distraction is another victory for fear and another step away from purpose. I decided from that day forward to guard my time as a sacred treasure, to think with purpose, to act with intention, and to keep my mind so occupied with creative thought that the devil himself could find no room to enter, for the one who commands their time commands their life. As the interview continued, I asked the devil to explain what separates the drifter from the non-drifter. His answer was sharp and without hesitation. The non-drifter, he said, has a definite purpose, a clear, burning desire that directs every thought and every action. He added, I cannot control a mind that knows where it is going. Those words struck me like a hammer, for I had heard similar truths from every successful man I had ever studied. Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, all of them had a single-minded purpose that guided them through failure, criticism, and doubt. It was their North Star, their invisible compass. The devil confessed that drifting begins the moment a person loses sight of their purpose. He said, I turn their energy against them. Their imagination becomes worry. Their desire becomes confusion. And their faith becomes fear. Without direction, even great talent and intelligence are wasted. It became clear to me that the first law of freedom is to know what you want and why you want it. To hold that image so firmly in your mind that no outside influence can shake it. A person with definite purpose becomes the master of circumstance, while the drifter becomes its victim. The devil went on to say that he uses confusion and distraction to destroy purpose. He said, I fill the minds of men with too many choices, too many opinions, too many voices shouting for attention. And when the mind cannot decide, it hesitates. When it hesitates, it drifts, and once it drifts, it falls easily into my hands. I realized then how easily modern life feeds this very trap. Newspapers, gossip, idle talk, endless argument, all of it keeping people thinking about everything but never acting on anything. The devil does not need to make you evil. He only needs to keep you uncertain. And uncertainty, left unchecked, becomes surrender. In contrast, the person of definite purpose acts with clarity. Each day, each hour is shaped by their goal. Their thoughts become tools, their imagination a blueprint for achievement. They do not wait for conditions to be perfect. They create their own conditions. That, the devil admitted, is the kind of person he fears most. I saw that true success is never an accident. It is the result of deliberate thought, of mind under command. The one who chooses their purpose and lives by it cannot be controlled by fear or doubt. They walk through life as a master, not as a victim. I asked the devil, what happens when a person finally discovers their purpose and begins to act upon it? He paused and then said, when that happens, my influence weakens. For every thought of purpose is a thought of faith, and faith is the one force I cannot defeat. Those words echoed within me like thunder. Faith, as I came to understand it, is not a blind belief in unseen powers. It is the calm assurance that our thoughts create our reality. It is the habit of expecting good, of knowing that every obstacle can be turned into an opportunity. The devil said, when a person learns to think in faith, I am finished with them. And I knew that was the truth. He admitted that his entire empire depends on human fear. Without fear, he said, I am nothing. I cannot plant doubt, I cannot grow indecision, and I cannot cause a man or woman to drift. Fear, he said, is my soil, my air, my nourishment. How powerful those words were, and how terrible. From that moment, I made it my life's work to understand faith, to teach that every mind is a garden, and fear is the weed that chokes it. But faith, properly cultivated, can grow a forest of power and purpose that no devil can penetrate. I asked the devil how he managed to keep so many people in fear when faith was always available to them. He laughed and said, because I make faith seem complicated. I fill their minds with doubt about religion, about themselves, about the world. I make them argue over words while forgetting to live by principles. That, he said, was one of his easiest tricks. He explained that real faith is not found in rituals or in words. It is found in action, in the courage to think independently and act upon one's own understanding. When people begin to act on their own thoughts, he said, they stop belonging to me. And so he keeps them busy debating truth instead of living it. I thought about this for a long time. How many people talk of faith, yet still fear poverty, failure, or ridicule? How many say they believe in greatness, yet doubt their own ability to achieve it? The devil said, every time a person says, I can't, I am beside them smiling. Those words chilled me. Real faith is a quiet power. It does not shout nor boast. It simply acts. It moves forward without proof, trusting that action itself will create the path. And in that movement, fear loses its voice, for faith and fear cannot live in the same mind at the same time. As our strange conversation continued, I pressed the devil further. If faith can destroy your power, I asked, what is it that keeps most people from finding it? His answer was simple. Education, he said, and the way it is misused. That statement caught me by surprise. He explained, I train people to memorize facts, not to think. I fill their minds with the thoughts of others until they no longer trust their own. He boasted that most schools prepare people to follow rules, not to create ideas, to seek approval, not truth. By the time they become adults, he said, most minds are too frightened to think freely. I realized then that true education is not the learning of information, but the cultivation of imagination. It is the ability to think your own thoughts and to stand by them even when others laugh. That is what separates the free mind from the controlled mind, and the creative soul from the drifting one. If a child is taught to think, to question, and to believe in their own ideas, the devil loses all control. For a thinking mind cannot be enslaved, and once awakened, it cannot go back to sleep. That, my friend, is why every age of progress begins with a thinker who refused to drift. The devil then revealed something even more unsettling. He said, when I fail to capture a mind through fear or ignorance, I use excess. I give them too much of everything. Too much comfort, too much entertainment, too much food, too much security. He smiled as he spoke, for he knew the power of indulgence. He said, I make them believe that pleasure is happiness, and that comfort is freedom. Then I sit back and watch as their purpose fades away. I saw the truth in his words, for excess dulls the spirit just as surely as poverty can starve it. A mind too comfortable loses its hunger for growth. I began to understand that balance is the great key. Discipline and desire must walk hand in hand. Too much of one becomes tyranny. Too much of the other becomes chaos. The devil said, I do not care whether a man destroys himself through fear or through pleasure. The result is the same. He drifts. So I learned that self-control is not denial. It is direction. It is the quiet mastery of the appetites and impulses that would otherwise rule us. The one who governs himself cannot be ruled by the devil, for temptation has no power over the disciplined mind. I asked the devil, do you ever fail? He laughed and said, of course. I fail every time a human being learns to think. Every time someone discovers the power of their own mind, every time a man or woman replaces fear with purpose, and then his voice grew darker. But such people are rare. He told me, my greatest losses come from those who take possession of their own minds and refuse to give them up. They develop habits of thought that attract health, happiness, and success. They think for themselves, decide for themselves, and act for themselves. I cannot touch them. He called them the masters of their fate. I reflected on those words and realized that every person has the same choice, to be a drifter or a master, to be controlled or to command. The difference lies not in talent, education, or luck, but in the use of one's own mind. That and nothing more decides our destiny. The devil fears only one thing: the human mind that has found its purpose, disciplined its habits, and learned to live by faith instead of fear. For such a mind becomes its own master, and once mastered, it can master anything. I asked the devil to describe the minds he could never control. He replied, they are rare, but they exist. These are the people who think before they speak, who decide before they act, who listen to all opinions but form their own. He said, they are guided by something stronger than fear, something I cannot imitate, faith mixed with purpose. He admitted that such people live by principles rather than moods. Their thoughts are orderly, their actions deliberate, and their minds are constantly engaged in creating, learning, and serving. They are busy, he said, but they are busy with the right things. It was almost as if he spoke with reluctant respect. I came to see that success has a certain rhythm. It is not frantic. It is focused, not hurried, but steady. The devil said, I cannot enter a mind that is occupied with constructive thought. I cannot break through the calm of a disciplined spirit. And I realized that serenity, when born of purpose, is a kind of armor against evil. So I made it my mission to live as those rare individuals live, to think clearly, to act deliberately, to direct every day toward a definite aim. For the one who does this becomes untouchable, and the devil himself must retreat. I asked the devil, if purpose and faith defeat you, what other tricks do you use to regain control? He answered without hesitation, I use envy and jealousy. He said, "When I cannot make people afraid, I make them dissatisfied. I whisper that others have more, that life is unfair, that happiness belongs to someone else." He smiled as he described how easily people fall into comparison. "I make them look at their neighbor's wealth, their friend's success, their rival's talent, and forget the gifts that lie within themselves." He said, "Once they begin to measure their worth by the lives of others, they drift back into my hands." I knew then that envy is a silent poison. It blinds us to our own path. It robs us of gratitude and replaces faith with bitterness. The devil said, when a person spends his energy resenting others, he has none left to create for himself. Those words carried the weight of truth. The antidote to envy is gratitude, and the cure for jealousy is purpose. For a man who knows his own direction does not waste a moment wishing to walk in another's. The devil cannot tempt a grateful soul, for gratitude turns every challenge into strength and every loss into learning. As our dialogue deepened, I asked the devil, "What other emotions do you use to control people?" He replied, "Anger. It is my faithful servant." He said, "Through anger I make men destroy in 1 hour what they have built in years. I cloud their judgment, twist their words, and make them strike at those who would help them most. I have seen it countless times. A good man loses his temper, and with it his reason. A wise woman reacts in rage and speaks words she can never take back." The devil said, "When I can make a person angry, I do not need to defeat them. They defeat themselves." And how true that is. He told me that anger is born of wounded pride. It grows when we forget that no insult can truly harm us unless we accept it. The devil said, "I feed anger by keeping people focused on what others say and do, and I keep their minds away from their own purpose. And in doing so, he makes them drift." I learned that the only cure for anger is understanding, to pause, to breathe, to ask, what lesson hides within this? For no one can rule a mind that refuses to be provoked. Calmness is power, and peace of mind is the weapon the devil fears most. The devil then revealed another of his favorite devices. He called it doubt. He said, "When I cannot frighten a man outright, I make him question himself. I whisper that his plans are foolish, that his dreams are too big, that his time is already past." And I knew at once that he was speaking of the silent enemy that lives in every human mind. He said, "Doubt is more useful to me than failure, for a man who fails may rise again, but a man who doubts will never begin." Those words pierced me. For I had seen countless people of talent and courage hold themselves back, paralyzed not by failure, but by hesitation. The devil smiled as he spoke, for he knew this was his most subtle trap. Doubt feeds upon indecision, and indecision is the gateway to drifting. Every time we hesitate to act, we strengthen fear's hold and weaken faith's command. The devil said, "I keep people waiting for the perfect moment, and while they wait, their dreams wither." I learned that confidence is not the absence of doubt. It is the mastery of it. To feel uncertainty and move forward anyway is the essence of courage. For action itself destroys doubt, and each step taken in faith is one the devil cannot follow. I asked the devil, "If doubt is one of your strongest weapons, what gives you the power to plant it?" He said, "It is easy. I use the opinions of others. I fill the world with noise, and people mistake it for truth." He smiled and said, "I make them care more about being accepted than about being right." How many lives, I wondered, are wasted because of the fear of criticism? How many dreams die in silence because someone said, "You can't," or "It's impossible"? The devil said, "I do not need to silence a man. I only need to make him afraid of laughter." And so millions live small lives, hidden behind the masks of approval. He told me that every great thinker, every inventor, every reformer who ever lived had to defeat the fear of ridicule. The moment a man dares to stand alone, he said, I lose my grip on him. For originality, like faith, cannot be controlled. It is the flame that burns through every lie. I realized that freedom begins the moment you stop asking permission to be yourself. The opinions of others cannot build your life for you, and no critic has ever created greatness. The devil cannot harm the one who listens to his own conscience more than to the crowd. As I listened to the devil's confessions, I began to see how every weakness of the human spirit could be traced to one single cause: the failure to think for oneself. He said, when I can make a person accept the thoughts of others as his own, I need do no more. He becomes my slave willingly. Those words were not spoken with pride, but with cold certainty. He explained that most people drift not because they are weak, but because they are lazy in thought. Thinking, he said, is hard work, and so men avoid it. They trade independence for convenience. They choose imitation over imagination. And with that, he rules them without resistance. I reflected on my own years of struggle and study. Every breakthrough I ever achieved came only when I stopped accepting other people's limits and began asking my own questions. The power to think, to decide, to imagine, that is the divine gift given to every person, yet so few dare to use it. The devil said, a single independent thinker is more dangerous to me than 1,000 who repeat what they are told. And I understood that the war for the human soul is fought in the silence of one's own thoughts. Whoever commands their thinking commands their destiny. I asked the devil, if thinking is so powerful, why do so few people ever learn to do it well? He smiled and said, because they fear the responsibility that comes with it. He went on, it is easier to blame fate or luck or circumstance than to admit that one's own thoughts have created one's reality. Those words carried a heavy truth. He said, the moment a man accepts full responsibility for his own life, I lose him forever. For then he sees that every result, good or bad, begins in the mind. The devil thrives on blame and excuses. They are the fuel that keeps him alive. When a person stops saying, I can't, and begins saying, I will, my power ends. I have learned that the greatest act of faith is self-responsibility. To say, I am the cause and I can be the cure. It is not arrogance, it is truth. For when a man takes command of his thoughts, he takes command of his destiny. He no longer waits for miracles. He becomes the creator of them. The devil cannot control the one who accepts no excuses, for that person sees fear for what it truly is, a shadow cast by his own inaction. Responsibility is freedom, and freedom, my friend, is the devil's defeat. The devil then spoke of another trap, one he said was older than any religion or empire. He called it the habit of worry. Through worry, he said, I turn imagination against itself. I make people use their greatest power, the power of thought, to create the very things they fear. He explained that worry is faith in reverse. It is the belief that misfortune will come, that failure will happen, that pain is inevitable. I do not have to punish those who worry, he said. They punish themselves. They attract the proof of their fears until they are convinced that life itself is cruel. I asked him how one could escape the grip of worry, and he replied, by living in the present, by acting now instead of dreaming of disaster. He said that worry always lives in the future, never in the moment, for in the moment action and awareness leave no space for fear. I realized that worry is the thief of energy. It drains the mind of creativity and the heart of courage. The man who learns to stay present, to do what he can now, and trust himself for tomorrow, that man the devil cannot touch, for worry dies where faith begins. I asked the devil, what is your opinion of religion? He smiled and said, it is both my greatest enemy and my most useful ally, depending on how it is used. I was surprised by the honesty in his tone, and so I asked him to explain. He said, when religion teaches people to think for themselves, to act with love, and to seek truth through experience, it weakens me. But when it teaches them to fear, to follow blindly, and to judge others, it strengthens my hold. Those words shook me deeply, for I saw how easily good intentions can be twisted into chains. He continued, I use dogma the way a spider uses its web. I catch the minds of those who confuse faith with fear, who follow rules without understanding their meaning, who pray for deliverance but refuse to act upon their prayers. It was a chilling confession. I understood then that true faith is never enslaving. It is liberating. The man who thinks, questions, and acts with love is beyond the devil's reach, for truth needs no fear to defend it, and love is the one light no darkness can withstand. The devil told me I am not concerned with what people believe. I only care about how deeply they fear. He said, if I can make a man believe that his God is angry, that life is hopeless, or that he himself is unworthy, then I have no need to do anything more. He will enslave himself. He explained that fear and faith cannot share the same space. Where there is fear, he said, faith cannot live, and where there is faith, I cannot enter. He said that his greatest victories come when men preach love, yet live in judgment, when they speak of peace, yet act in hate. I asked him if he used religion intentionally to divide people. He replied, of course, I whisper into every group that they alone possess the truth, and I watch as they destroy each other in my name. His laughter, even imagined, chilled me, for I knew that his words reflected the history of mankind. I learned that true faith never divides. It unites. It gives courage, not fear, and wisdom, not hate. The devil cannot survive where love and understanding grow, for those are the fruits of a mind that knows its own divine power. I asked the devil, if you fear love and faith so greatly, why do more people not choose them? He said, because love requires courage and faith demands action. And most people prefer comfort to courage and excuses to effort. His words were heavy with truth. He told me, love destroys all my weapons. It heals fear, dissolves envy, ends anger, and silences doubt. But I have found that people often mistake love for weakness. They talk of love, but they practice possession. They seek control, not connection. He said, when love becomes selfish, it becomes mine. When faith becomes blind, it becomes mine. When hope becomes waiting instead of doing, it becomes mine. I listened, knowing that his words revealed the subtle ways he twists human virtue into his own advantage. I realized then that love is the greatest form of intelligence. It is the harmony of the heart and the mind working as one. It is courage in action, kindness in motion, and truth made visible. The devil cannot dwell in the heart of one who truly loves, for love and fear cannot breathe the same air. The devil grew restless as our conversation continued. You speak of love as though it were a weapon against me, he said. But tell me, how many people truly understand what love is? His tone was mocking, yet behind it I sensed unease. He went on, people think love is an emotion, fleeting, delicate, and dependent on circumstance. They fall in and out of it as easily as they change their clothes. Such love is mine, for it is ruled by desire and fear, not by truth. And in those words I saw the reflection of countless broken hearts. He said, real love is a state of mind, and I cannot touch it, for it does not cling, nor demand, nor fear loss. It gives freely without asking, and in giving it becomes untouchable. Then he smiled bitterly. But few people ever rise that high. I told him that even one person who learns to love without fear becomes a light to thousands. He turned away as if to hide his discomfort, for love, once awakened, spreads beyond control, and every act of kindness weakens his shadow a little more. I asked the devil, if love and faith defeat you, then what keeps you alive in the hearts of men? He answered, forgetfulness. He said, people forget who they are. They forget the power that lies within them. They forget that every great truth has already been written upon their souls. He told me, I thrive on forgetfulness. I make people remember their failures but forget their victories. I make them remember their pain but forget their strength. I make them look at their past and believe it defines their future. His words cut deep, for I knew how many lives were bound by that lie. He said, if I can make a man forget his purpose for even one day, I can make him drift for years. I saw how subtle his power truly was, not in force, but in distraction, not in chains, but in forgetfulness. It is not evil that rules the world, but the neglect of good. So I resolved never to forget, to remind every listener, every reader, and every seeker that they are the masters of their own mind. For remembrance of truth is freedom, and the devil's only hope is that we forget who we really are. I asked the devil what he feared most of all. He paused for a moment, then said, I fear a mind that is fully awake, a mind that observes itself, that questions every thought and emotion before accepting it. He said, such a mind cannot be deceived, for it no longer reacts. It chooses. He explained, most people live as though asleep. They mistake their fears for facts, their opinions for truth, and their habits for identity. I do not have to control them. I only have to keep them from waking up. His honesty was both horrifying and liberating. I realized that awareness itself is the beginning of freedom, to see one's own thoughts as separate from the self, to observe without reacting, to question every emotion. This is the light that burns through the fog of fear. And in that light, the devil has no form. So I learned that enlightenment is not some distant goal. It is simply the act of paying attention, of living consciously instead of mechanically. For the awakened mind cannot drift, and the devil cannot whisper to one who listens only to truth. The devil told me, I have another great ally, habit without awareness. I make men repeat the same day over and over until they call it life. He said, they rise, they work, they eat, they sleep. All without thought, all without purpose. They are alive, but not truly living. He explained that most people become prisoners of routine. I do not need to destroy them, he said. I simply keep them comfortable, predictable, unthinking. He smiled as he added, I keep them so busy surviving that they forget to live. I understood then that freedom is not found in escape from work, but in awareness within it. Every act done consciously becomes creation. Every act done unconsciously becomes slavery. The devil said, when a man begins to do even the smallest task with purpose, I grow weaker. So I learned to make every moment an act of choice, to walk, speak, and think with intention. For life is not measured by years, but by awareness. And the devil cannot hold a mind that lives every moment awake and alive. The devil then confessed, there is one more thing I fear greatly, persistence. He said, when a man refuses to quit, when he rises after every fall and keeps moving forward no matter the obstacle, I am powerless against him. He told me that most people give up at the first sign of difficulty. They pray for strength but abandon the test that would build it. They wish for success but retreat from the struggle that creates it. I feed upon their surrender. His words revealed the tragic truth of human weakness. He said, persistence is the armor of faith. It turns failure into fuel, defeat into determination, and fear into fire. I knew then that persistence is not stubbornness. It is the quiet courage to continue when every voice says stop. It is the heartbeat of purpose itself. So I made persistence my closest companion, for the one who simply refuses to quit cannot be conquered. The devil must eventually step aside, for he cannot outlast the will of a soul that never gives up. The devil warned me, even persistence can be turned to my use if a man pursues the wrong purpose. He said, I make them chase money without meaning, ambition without service, progress without peace. He smiled and added, I let them climb the ladder of success, only to find it leaning against the wrong wall. Those words struck me deeply, for I had seen many who worked tirelessly, yet found no joy, who gained wealth but lost peace, who reached their goals only to feel empty. The devil said, when effort is not guided by purpose, it becomes my playground. I realized then that success without direction is failure in disguise. Every action must serve a higher aim. Every goal must feed the soul as well as the body. The devil cannot trap a man whose ambition is rooted in service, for selfless purpose purifies desire. I learned that persistence must walk hand in hand with wisdom. To continue blindly is as dangerous as to quit too soon. But when purpose and perseverance unite, the result is unstoppable, and the devil himself can only watch in defeat. I asked the devil what happens when a person discovers their purpose and lives with persistence and faith. His face, in my imagination, grew darker. Then, he said, they become creators, and I cannot control a creator. He spoke the word as though it were poison. He said, a creator understands that thought is the seed of all reality. They do not beg for miracles. They create them. They do not wait for opportunity. They make it. They do not pray for strength. They grow it through action. He continued, every man or woman who learns to think with purpose becomes my enemy, for they no longer fear failure. They understand it as part of the process. And in that understanding, I lose all power. I could sense his frustration even in imagination. I realized that creation is the divine nature of man, to imagine and then to act, to bring into form what once existed only in thought. That is the highest expression of life, and the devil cannot touch a soul that knows it is a creator. The devil said, you speak of creation as though it were divine, but tell me, how many people truly create? I answered him, all people create, some consciously, others by neglect, for every thought, every emotion, every belief is an act of creation. He looked uneasy, for he knew it was true. He said, that is why I keep them thinking small. I fill their minds with limitation. I make them believe that greatness belongs only to the chosen few, and by believing it, they create their own chains. I could almost see his satisfaction as he spoke those words. I told him that creation is not a privilege, it is a birthright, that every person shapes their world through thought, word, and deed, that every emotion plants a seed in the garden of reality. He turned away, for truth is the one sound he cannot endure. I learned that the difference between the free and the enslaved is not circumstance, but awareness. The one who knows he is creating can choose, but the one who forgets he is creating drifts. And drifting, my friend, is the devil's greatest delight. I asked the devil, if creation is the key to freedom, then what is the key to mastery? He replied, control of attention. He said, where attention goes, energy flows, and where energy flows, results grow. I rule the minds of those who scatter their attention. I lose the ones who learn to focus it. He explained, I flood the world with distractions. I fill every waking moment with noise, urgency, and temptation. I make them believe that busy means productive, and in chasing everything, they accomplish nothing. Those words echoed the truth of modern life. I saw that attention is the steering wheel of the mind, and whoever holds it decides the direction of destiny. The devil said, when a man learns to hold his attention upon one purpose until it bears fruit, he becomes my master. It was the first time I had heard him speak with fear. So I learned that mastery is not complexity, it is concentration. To do one thing with full awareness is to reclaim your power. To live each moment with focus is to walk beyond the devil's reach, for no distraction can move the mind that is truly centered. The devil said, you speak of focus and mastery as though they are easy, yet you forget how much I offer in exchange for distraction. He laughed softly and said, I give them comfort, pleasure, escape. I make them believe that peace comes from avoidance rather than awareness. He explained, when a man sits in silence, I whisper his fears. When he begins to reflect, I show him his past. When he tries to think deeply, I flood his mind with trivial desires. I do everything I can to keep him from meeting himself. I realized then that the greatest journey is inward, the meeting of the self with the self, the courage to sit in stillness and listen. For in that silence, truth begins to speak. and the devil has no language for truth. So I learned to be still, to listen beyond thought, to know that wisdom does not shout, it whispers. And in the quiet of one's own mind lies a strength beyond all fear. For the one who masters silence masters the devil himself. I asked the devil, if silence is your enemy, then how can people learn to use it? He said, few ever will, for silence reveals truth, and most people fear truth more than they fear me. His words were soft but cruelly honest. He said, when a person becomes still, they begin to hear the quiet voice of their own conscience, and that voice cannot be silenced. It reminds them of what they could be, of what they have forgotten, and that is the beginning of my end. I told him that truth, once heard, cannot be unheard. He nodded unwillingly. That is why, he said, I fill their lives with constant noise. If I can keep them listening to the world, they will never listen to their souls. I saw then how much he feared awareness. So I learned that silence is not emptiness, it is presence. It is the meeting place between thought and creation, between fear and faith. And when the mind learns to rest in that stillness, the devil's voice fades into nothingness. As our conversation neared its end, I asked the devil, if you could give one piece of advice to humanity, what would it be? He smiled darkly and said, do not think, do not question, do not change. Then he added, for the moment man begins to think, question, and change, my kingdom begins to crumble. He said, keep them entertained, keep them angry, keep them afraid, and I will rule forever. I listened and felt a chill, for I could see that his strategy had not changed in thousands of years. He rules not through strength, but through distraction and fear. I told him that his reign would not last forever, that even in the darkest times there are minds awakening, hearts remembering, souls refusing to drift. He turned away and said, perhaps, but I will keep them busy until they forget again. It was his last attempt at victory. So I made a vow that day to remind every person who would listen that their mind is their own, that they were born to think, to create, to love, and to choose. For the moment a man claims ownership of his mind, the devil disappears like mist in sunlight. When my strange interview with the devil ended, I sat in silence for a long time. The words I had heard were not meant to frighten me, they were meant to awaken me. I realized that the devil's power exists only in human ignorance, and that knowledge of truth is its own protection. I understood that every person holds within them two voices, one of faith and one of fear, one that builds and one that destroys, one that says I can and one that whispers I can't. And in every moment we choose which one will rule our minds. The battle is not between good and evil as the world imagines it. It is between awareness and forgetfulness, between creation and drifting, between the mind that commands itself and the mind that obeys the world. The choice, though simple, must be made again each day. So I say to you, my friend, awaken your mind, guard your thoughts as you would your life, for they are your life. The devil cannot take what you do not give, and every moment of conscious thought is another step into freedom. As I reflected upon all that I had learned, I saw that the devil's greatest secret was not his power, but our surrender. He has no strength except the strength we yield to him through fear, doubt, and drifting. The keys to freedom have always been in our hands. Purpose defeats drifting. Faith destroys fear. Gratitude dissolves envy. Love overcomes anger, and awareness ends ignorance. Each of these virtues is a light, and even the smallest light drives back the shadow completely. I understood that life is not meant to be a battle against evil, but a journey toward mastery. The devil is only the voice of our lower self asking us to forget our power. The moment we remember who we are, his voice fades into silence. So I leave you with this truth. You are the master of your mind. You are the creator of your world. You are the keeper of your soul. And the only true devil you must outwit is the one you allow to live in your own thoughts. My friend, I did not write these words to frighten you. I wrote them to free you. For every man and woman is born with the same invisible power, the power to choose their own thoughts. And in that choice lies all creation, all freedom, all destiny. You need not fear the devil, for he is nothing more than the echo of your own forgotten strength. When you remember your purpose, when you think with faith, when you act with love, his voice disappears and only truth remains. So begin now. Take possession of your mind. Direct it toward the highest good you can imagine. Live each moment as a creator, not a drifter, as a master, not a slave, and know that no power on earth or in spirit can conquer the one who thinks for himself. May these words awaken your courage, sharpen your purpose, and remind you that you are greater than fear. For the mind of man, rightly used, is the mind of God in action.
If this inspired you, subscribe and follow for more, and don't miss the other videos we've lined up for you. Keep learning, keep growing. Your next breakthrough could be one click away.